TFA fam, what is going on? Welcome into the early look at Week 3 waivers. The day started off a little gross, starting to pick up. Kev's Chiefs are going at it right now, so we're going to make quick work of this so Kev can get back to his game. Kev, you got quarterbacks. Go ahead and jump into that right off the bat.
Yeah, I think it's pretty straightforward this week with in terms of quarterbacks. One, you have Justin Fields. Obviously, we know Andy Dalton went down with a knee injury in the first half of that game against the Bears. Fields, I mean, he didn't really need to do a whole lot. They kind of had that game in hand. Completed 6 of 13 for 60 yards and an interception. Also rushed 10 times for 31 yards. He's rostered in 51% of leagues. I just kind of hesitate to put him on here because I think most people probably still hold him. But if he is available out there, I definitely think he's worth an add everywhere because of his rushing upside. So definitely add Justin Fields if he's sitting out there for this week, because I think this is probably opens the door for him to take over. We don't exactly know if Andy Dalton's going to be out next week, but it is not sounding good, I think. Sam Darnold continues to play well. Only rostered in 15% of leagues. Gets Houston this week on Thursday Night Football. Through 2 weeks, he has 584 passing yards, three passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdowns. Moving forward, really has a nice schedule too. He gets Houston, Dallas, Philly, and Minnesota over the next 4 weeks. So this offense has looked really, really good so far through 2 games. And so I like Sam Darnold, and I think he's definitely worth an add. Teddy Bridgewater. I didn't think we'd be talking about Teddy Bridgewater, but here we are, 17% rostered. Gets the New York Jets next week. A little typo there, but 592 passing yards and 4 touchdowns over the first 2 weeks of the season. I mean, he has double-digit or 20-point performances in each of his first 2 weeks as well. So, and gets the Jets this week. That Jets defense does not look like anything imposing. So, I like Teddy Bridgewater as well. I think he's also an option. Derek Carr. I mean, this Raider offense so far for the first 2 weeks has looked really good, and they beat 2 really good teams in the Ravens and the Steelers today on the road. Beat the Steelers, 817 passing yards, 4 touchdowns over his first 2 games. The Raiders get Miami, the Chargers, Chicago, Denver, and Philly before their Week 8 bye. So, I mean, I don't love playing Derek Carr, but, as well as they're playing right now, I don't think you could really turn an eye on him. And then Daniel Jones makes an appearance in the waiver ads this week. Quietly has scored 20-plus fantasy points in each of his first 2 games, over 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns over that span. Gets Atlanta, New Orleans, Dallas, and the Rams over the next 4 weeks. So while it's kind of gross to play Daniel Jones, I get it, but he's played really well, and he's shown that rushing upside that, one reason that I think somebody that I kind of talked about over the offseason is a sleeper, but he continues to play really well, and, he gets Atlanta this week, a defense that I'm not worried about at all. So, again, at this point, you're probably not needing to play Daniel Jones because we're not on buys or anything like that, but, the schedule is encouraging, and I think the door is wide open for this offense to continue to improve, and hopefully I think Saquon Barkley also takes a big step. We'll talk about that once we get to rankings later in the week.
Do you, Kev, just real quick for the people who are listening on podcasts, do you have these kind of ranked in terms of how you would prefer to add them?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right. Just wanted to make sure. Let's go ahead and jump right over to running backs for Week 3. Really not a lot to talk about here. Didn't have a bunch of injuries or anything crazy happen. The only ones who are making the must-adds for this week are guys who are kind of right around that 50% roster range with Sony Michel and Tony Pollard. Obviously, Henderson goes down with the rib injury. That's something you typically don't want to see with your running back, so Michel definitely needs to be picked up if he's available. And then Tony Pollard, this still doesn't make sense to me. Like, he's sitting around 50% in Yahoo leagues, but only 38% rostered in ESPN leagues. He is one of the few handcuffs, quote unquote, in the league where if Zeke were to go down, you kind of have a 1-to-1 replacement in terms of their fantasy value between those two. But then on top of that, he also has standalone value. Pollard saw 16 opportunities to Zeke's 18 today during today's game. I will say that he's only seen 20 and 21 snaps compared to 70 and 44 for Zeke. So Zeke obviously still has the edge as far as like the lead back goes, but Pollard's been looking good, and I think it's going to be hard for Dallas to keep Pollard off the field. So if he's available, go out and grab him. A couple other guys to mention here. The New York Jets running back room is starting to take shape. Today, Michael Carter and Ty Johnson both saw 33 snaps. Tevin Coleman saw 5 carries, but only 7 snaps. 11 carries, 3 targets for Michael Carter, 88 total yards. Ty Johnson, no targets, but he did have 12 carries for 50 yards. I think it's going to be one of those cases where it's going to be a split backfield between the two younger guys, and I don't know who we can expect to have the production on a week-to-week basis. But if you're in 12-team plus leagues, definitely those guys are worth a add, especially if you're desperate at running back. Ty Johnson, more widely available. Carter's saying around that 50% rostership mark. So Ty Johnson, the guy who you can go out and add. For the next guy, I don't want to overreact to 1 week, but we might have to start thinking about J.D. McKissic again. Week 1, we were like, all right, this looks great. It's the Antonio Gibson show. He got damn near all the opportunities, saw the majority of the snaps, feeling good. And then Thursday night happens. McKissic did see 31 snaps to Gibson's 43. Like I said, week 1 wasn't nearly as involved, but week 2, ripped off that big catch. Still wasn't doing much in terms of the running game, but if he's going to start being sprinkled in the passing game again over Gibson, which just does not make any sense, he's someone to look to add. I wouldn't be going out and overspending, fab or anything like that, or a waiver priority just based on that. But someone who we probably should be looking at picking up again, especially 12-team leagues and higher. Another one, Kev, you were saying, you weren't expecting to talk about Teddy Bridgewater. I wasn't expecting to talk about Cordarrelle Patterson, but here we are. I talked about him as a stash last week, but I think he's kind of graduated to the ad list. So through 2 weeks, 24 snaps in both weeks. Week 1, he had 9 opportunities for 67 total yards. Today, he had 2 touchdowns on 13 opportunities and a very nice 69 yards. Again, this is a deeper league ad, someone I'm not going after in 10 or 18 leagues or anything like that. But if the Falcons are going to continue to play from behind, and if Mike Davis is going to continue to struggle, I think Patterson's someone who's going to be involved. He was always a gadget player before, but it kind of seems like he's found a little niche here with the Falcons. So he's definitely worth an add again if you're struggling for running back production on your teams. Then just some other guys to throw out here. Kenneth Gainwell, talked about him last week. Tony Jones Jr. also mentioned him. He's obviously the guy to own behind Kamara. That offense kind of fell apart today. And then Justin Jackson, between him and Larry Roundtree, this is something where 14, 16-team leagues are just something to keep an eye on if we start to get a little bit of a trend going here. But week 1, it looked like Larry Roundtree was going to be the guy behind Eckler. Now week 2, Justin Jackson comes out and now touches him. So just a name to keep in mind. Another stash, Damian Williams. He's the clear guy behind Monty. Savon Ahmed continues to get some opportunities and targets behind Myles Gaskin. And then Jeremy McNichols chipped in with some opportunity as well today. But like I said, the must-adds are guys who are probably already owned in 12-team leagues. If they're available in your 10-team leagues, go out and get. And then guys like the Jets backfield, Cordarrelle Patterson, Kenneth Gainwell, and J.D. McKissic would be the next in line for me.
Yeah, I will say this really quickly, too, that we'll have to monitor the San Francisco situation because
thanks for
Trey Sermon going down and JaMychal Hasty. Also, Elijah Mitchell went down, but he came back into the game. But I think their 4th running back is Trenton Cannon. So
correct.
We'll have to see how that shakes out. If both those guys are out next week, Cannon can end up being an interesting play next week. But, that's a long way to go. We have to wait and see how everything shakes out there. And also, I would say that Patterson is that in a lot of leagues, he's actually listed like at Yahoo. I know he's listed as a running back and wide receiver because that does make him a little bit interesting in terms of, where you can play him.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Speaking of wide receiver.
Yeah, speaking of wide receiver, let's jump over there. And I'm going to hit on – so these top 5 guys are kind of the guys I feel like should be rostered in 10-team leagues and above, right? So Rondale Moore went out and dominated today, hauled in 7 receptions on 8 targets, 114 yards touchdown. Worth noting, he did only play 46% of offensive snaps, but I think he should be rostered in 10-team leagues and above. We continue to see how dynamic he could be. Last week, I think he had 60 yards, so he did haul in a long touchdown today. So I love Rondell Moore, and they get Jacksonville next week. So Rondell Moore, I think it continues to impress, and I think he's somebody that's going to continually be involved. I wish they would just send AJ Green away. I know AJ Green was okay today, but really, I think it should be Christian Kirk and Rondell Moore to go with DeAndre Hopkins. But I digress. Henry Ruggs, I was surprised he's only rostered in 34% of leagues. Had himself a really good day today, 113 yards and a score on 7 targets. I do think he's going to be a little bit boom or bust. But I think the Raiders offense just continues to play really well. And, I very easily could have Bryan Edwards on this list as well. He had a touchdown that called back to a penalty, or else he probably would also be on this list. So both of those, second-year wide receivers are really starting to come into their own a little bit here. So I like Henry Ruggs. KJ Osborne, 2% rostered. Last week, I guess he proved that it just wasn't a fluke. He went for 91 yards and a score on 5 receptions on 6 targets against the Cardinals today. The majority of production did come from a 64-yard touchdown he had. I believe it was on the first drive of the game. And he currently leads the Vikings in receiving yards through 2 weeks. So they continue to play a lot of 11 personnel and 3 wide receivers on the field. They just don't really have a tight end. So KJ Osborne continues to kind of impress here. It is tough because I think in games that they are ahead. I do think that he will not get as many opportunities, but so far, they've been in these shootouts these first 2 weeks. So KJ Osborne, I kind of like adding him here, and I think it's 10-team leagues and above. Darnell Mooney, only rostered in 45% of leagues. He hauled in 6 of 8 for 66 yards. With Justin Fields likely starting week 3, I think Mooney makes for a really solid flex option against Cleveland next week. So I do like Darnell Mooney. I was surprised he's available this much, but I think people dropped him. I was surprised that he was only rostered in 45% of leagues. But if Darnell Mooney's sitting out there, he definitely deserves to be owned. He played 100% of the snaps last week, and Darnell Mooney, I think, is only going to get better as the year goes on. Christian Kirk, 25%. I figured it'd be a little bit more than that after the big week he had last week, but cooled off a little bit this week. Three receptions on 45 targets for 65 yards. I think he's kind of a boom or bust. Now, these other guys are kind of like, I don't think none of these guys are must-adds. You don't have to go out and add these guys. But if they are sitting out there, I do have some intrigue, especially in 12-team leagues and above. Terrace Marshall, again, I continue to think he needs to be rostered in more leagues. They just really haven't been pushed as much. Today, they're kind of, really had the stranglehold of that game. I think once they're down a little bit and they really have to be pushed a little bit, I do think, you see more involvement from Terrace Marshall, but only 20% rostered. James Washington, the Steelers are idiots. I don't know what they're doing with Deontay Johnson. I really don't get it. Why they had any of their starters out there on that final play of the game where they were down by 9 points. The game was over. There was like 5 seconds left of the game. And lo and behold, Deontay Johnson gets hurt. We're having to wait and see. I don't think they've announced anything yet in terms of an injury. But if he's going to be out, James Washington definitely deserves to be rostered more with only 1%. He slides in as that number 3 wide receiver, and he's proven to be productive whenever one of these guys are out. So I like James Washington. And if we find out this is a long-term injury, he probably turns into more of a must-add than just somebody I think you could speculatively add. Bryan Edwards, we already talked about. Don't need to go into that. Should have had a touchdown. He did not. Only rostered 17% of leagues. But I think he continues to impress. Tim Patrick had a decent day today. I think he did catch a touchdown, but it wasn't anything overly impressive. It was the Cortland Sutton show in Jacksonville, only rostered 12%. Rashad Bateman is only rostered 13% of leagues. I think he's probably back in 2 or 3 weeks from now. And so I definitely would be adding him now. It's only a few more weeks he'll be back. And then other guys like Nelson Aguilar, Zach Pascal just continues to just get score touchdowns. That's what he does, But it was good to see Michael Pittman.
Yes.
So Michael Pittman was only rostered in like 61%. Our cutoff is usually 60%. If he's out there, he definitely deserves to be added. But a big bounce back game for him. We'll have to see what's going to happen with Carson Wentz. He did exit the game at the end. And there's some deep league stashes. KJ Hamler, Quez Watkins had over 100 yards, had that long, I think it was like 86-yard reception today. Darius Slayton, again, I don't think he's somebody that I think people need to go out and add. But I think if something were to happen to one of these pass catches, I think Darius Slayton makes for an interesting add. Van Jefferson, I always want anybody that's going to tie to this Rams offense. And then Josh Palmer, again, I think these are just guys, if you're in like a 14, 16-team league, I'd be looking at.
There you have it. Zaddy, we do talk about defenses, but we'll do that on a separate streaming show along with tight ends. Look through the list, and there's really no tight ends I feel like that I had to talk about as a waiver ad. We're going to talk about them as streaming options in the show later this week, so make sure you guys are subscribed. We'll have the rest of that content coming out to you. Don't think there was anything else in the chat. Appreciate you guys coming through and checking us out. Like I said, leave a like, leave a comment, and we'll have the other content coming out for you later this week with start sets, streamers, all that stuff. So we will have you covered. best of luck in the rest of week 2. Any questions that you guys have, you can either jump over the Discord, or you can get into or just leave a comment on the YouTube as well. Gamer, we will also talk about kickers in the streaming video as well. So we got you all covered with all of that. Keep it tuned in here. We will have you guys all squared away with more content coming up.